Thanks, Linda. Thank you, Linda. And how nice it is to look out and see some of the old faces that I haven't seen for so many years, and some of the ones that I see often, and some faces that I don't even know. So it's lovely to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And the topic, Death in the Tarot, is actually an incredibly serious topic. Okay, so it's something that we do need to know where we stand with, is how I would put it. Many of you who do readings might decide that you don't want to go anywhere near seeing death in the tarot, which is absolutely fine. Other people would understand that there's a death card in the tarot, and therefore every time you do a tarot reading, you're going to, in so many readings, the death card is going to come out. So what I want to talk about first of all is the death card. Okay, so we haven't got a whiteboard, so let's just call out some words. You're doing a reading for a client, and the first card that comes up is the death card. So what would you say about that? What do you think that might mean? Have you got a favourite word that you might use for that card? Sorry? Clearing away. Okay, that's a good one. Transformation. Changes. I'm just going to write these down when we get a whiteboard. Actually, Linda might have to, because I'm on my dog tag here and I don't think I can move very far. Linda, can... Have you got a whiteboard marker? Yeah, okay. It's just that I don't think I can reach. On my leash. On my dog tag, that's right. Okay, so someone said clearing away, Linda. Yeah. So clearing away. Someone said transformation. Anything else? Endings and beginnings. Change. Amputation. That's a new one. Why is that your favourite, Rudy? Amputation came to mind. Okay. That happens. Go with the intuition. Release. I always see release more as judgment, but anyway, release, yep. Letting go. Cutting away. What's all this happening with you today? Cutting off, amputation, where are you coming from? Okay, any more? How about death? Yeah, right, good one. Okay, my favourite is probably a cycle of transformation. And when I'm working with clients, I would talk about the fact that to try and explain it to them, I would say it's a little bit like the seasons of autumn, winter and spring. That, the first stage is the letting go, which is like autumn. Then there's this period of like winter where there's no life, and that's often a period of grief. And then we have like spring, we have the new beginning. And most of all, it's a natural cycle. So everything dies, everything has its beginning and its ending. So I was thinking last night, actually, before I was going to sleep about this, and I was thinking, it's a little bit like Mary Greer's new topic, isn't it? 21 ways to read a tarot card. I couldn't think of 21 ways to read the death card, so I'll be very interested to read her book. But what I did think of is, so where to now? What's going to be cleared away? What's the transformation about? What's the ending and beginning about? Because that can happen on many different levels. It can happen on a mundane level. It can happen on a psychological level. It can happen on an emotional level, a spiritual level, a mundane level, a physical level. And the physical level, out of all of those, would be the only one that would mean physical death. Okay, that the person was going to go through a physical death. But then if they're going to go through all of that, then unless they already know that they would be the person who would be dying, then it's not going to be their death. So you'd be a very brave person when you saw the death card to come out to say, "Ooh, that's a death, you're going to die," or someone around you is going to die. Wouldn't that be very foolish? Yeah, it would be, because it could mean many different things, and the experience could be held in the spiritual body or the emotional body and all the others that I just said. So there is nothing in the death card itself to indicate that there is going to be any sort of physical death, is there? You might have gathered that physical death is really mainly my topic today, okay? And I also need to say that I was terrified of seeing physical death in the tarot for, I don't know, maybe 10 years of my professional reading life. So if I saw it, I wouldn't see it. I'd not see it, okay? And then I was forced to see it. And now I see it all the time, and it's not an issue. Because if you think about it, if you're a professional tarot reader, you do thousands and thousands and thousands of tarot readings. Now, out of all those thousands and thousands and thousands of tarot readings, someone's going to have a death around them. It's a common thing. It happens all the time, okay? So why would it come up in a tarot reading? Probably to pre-warn the person, whether that is conscious, subconscious, or totally unconscious. It's to plant a seed of some description that could well be for the protection of that person, so that if a physical death occurs to someone close to them, they don't fall totally apart. They don't have a breakdown. Okay? So you never know the reason why it comes out. Now, another card that we could put up there, yeah, thanks, is the Tower. Now, what are some meanings for the Tower? Breakthrough, breakdown, letting go again, sudden and unexpected change, yeah, restructuring, turmoil, and the old devastation, revelation, chaos. That's a really good one, chaos. Yep.
Wake up call.
Wake up call. Okay, so when you put two of those together, it's a fairly stunning, unexpected ending in someone's life, isn't it? Okay, so those two cards, and I could also put the Wheel of Fortune in that little group, are really good indicators that something unusual and extremely profound and unexpected and final is about to happen in someone's life. So there's they're alert warning cards. Okay. Now, my aims for today really is to share with you in a practical way observations that I have made from tarot readings where physical death has been the issue. Now, there's all sorts of circumstances when that happens. For instance, when a client has known that someone around them was likely to die in the near future, and they had specifically asked a question about that person. For example, they might have an elderly parent, and that elderly parent might be in a nursing home, and they might ask the question, you know, how long is my parent going to be around for? Okay. It may be someone around them who has a terminal illness, who's just been diagnosed with cancer or some other, terminal illness, and the person wants to know what is going to happen to them. Now, if you're a professional tarot reader, that's a very common question. It's not an unusual question to be asked. You get asked it quite often, or I do. Another one is a client where someone has died and they want to understand more about why they died or what happened to them. So that's like death as an after effect. Or a client is unaware of the death of someone around them and it appears unexpectedly in a tarot reading. Now, that is the most difficult one to deal with. And where do you see that? How would you see that? Well, does anyone besides me use the astrological spread? Sometimes? Okay. Well, that's the spread that I usually see it in. And it usually appears in the 8th house, second house, and 12th house, but then it also appears elsewhere. But they're the main ones, 2nd, 8 and 12. And you see it in there, and you see it will always repeat itself, so you'll see the pattern continually being repeated throughout the reading. And the one that I think you need to be extremely aware of, and not extremely aware of, that you need to be very respectful of, and I can't usually read this until after the fact, but I know what it looks like, which is the death of the client themselves. So I know what a reading looks for someone who is about to die and has no idea that they are about to die. I know what cards come up, I've seen it several times, but I could never read it at the time as that. So I've never usually, I would never say it, and I don't think I've seen it. I've seen it after the fact, but I've never seen it at the time. So, I'll show you the reason for that. We'll put some overheads up. Okay, so let's start off with, okay, so probably one of the things I need to say is that the client's subconscious will either accept or reject the idea of the death being physical. So really all you have to do is read the cards in their normal way. You don't have to say to someone there's a physical death. The client will usually say to you, unless they're asking a specific question about a particular person and what their future is, if they're going to die or not die. Otherwise, you don't have to actually blatantly say it, particularly when you're working with major arcana cards. The person will see it by the images in the card, or they'll hear it from what you say and the way you read the cards. Okay. So what cards would we expect to see in a reading that may portray the death experience of someone close to us? Now, there's a big difference between looking at the death of someone that you're emotionally attached to and looking at the death of someone that perhaps you're going to be advantaged by, like a great uncle, the other side of the world, who's going to leave you money. Would be a totally different set of cards from your mother, father, or a close member of your family, or a close friend. So the images would be very different. However, some of the images that you often see around death are those. All right. Just make sure I've got the right one up. So the Tower, for all the reasons that we saw before. Judgment, because that's the Judgment over there with the angel. Judgment is release and liberation. So that card is often there when the person has actually been through a fairly difficult time in their life, because then it is actually a release for them. The Death card is the one up the top there, that's from the spiral deck. And that is all the things we looked at. The Hermit, often the Hermit in a death reading is the person feeling really alone, starting to disconnect from the world and go into themselves. And the Moon is around issues of abandoning or being abandoned. It's fear of the unknown and being emotionally overwhelmed. So the Hermit and the Moon would be when the person knew they were dying. Okay? Judgment, the World, the Tower and Death, they may or may not know that they are dying. Now, some of the minor arcana cards also have images of death, and of course you'd need to see a lot of different cards together. But from the Suit of Swords, we can see there we have the 3, with the 3 it's the separation, separating from people that you love. The 5 is the unfairness of being struck down. That's how that's usually felt, as if a power much stronger than yourself has sort of struck you down and you feel victimised by that. The 6 is typically a card of grief. So the 10 is devastation. So grief, you can't go through grief if you're the one who has died. So grief would be a card for someone where someone around you was dying, because you're going to live through that. Ready? Yeah, the 4 of Swords is, to me, it could be. It's an illness. It's usually someone who's been ill for a while, yeah. And the 10 is a final ending. And that is particularly a card of death that can apply in both instances. It can apply if it's someone around you who's dying. It can also apply if it's the person themselves who are dying. Often it's very much a near-death experience as well. The card of death can be someone who perhaps had a heart attack or a stroke and came back from that heart attack or that stroke. Pardon? It doesn't look like it, but interestingly enough, the 10 of Swords and the Tower together, in my personal experience, has been when people have been struck down by a stroke, also when they've had sudden and unexpected heart attacks and they've been revived with paddles or something has brought them back to life again. It's also those 2 cards are more a mental breakdown as well. So those 2 cards together can mean a lot of different things. They could also be the sudden ending of a relationship. It doesn't have to be physical death. So the Tower and the 10 of Swords together, and to me it's got a lot to do with often which way around they are, but the Tower and the 10 of Swords together can be some totally shattering, devastating experience that is incredibly wounding. And the wounding can be mentally, emotionally or physically. So those 2 cards together wouldn't be enough for me to say to anyone you're dying or anyone else around you is dying. But it would be a combination that I would look at very, very carefully, because I would be aware that it could very easily mean that. Okay, but it doesn't mean it has to. Okay. The Page of Swords. The Page of Swords with some of those cards could mean hearing about death. To me, the Page of Swords is the one page that does talk about news or communication, so yeah.
I had the Page of Swords come up with the Empress once
An abortion, yeah. It's sort of a very troubling card, isn't it? It's an interference card, so it interferes in the status quo, yeah. Now, from the Suit of Cups, if we're looking at an experience. Now, what we're looking at, remember, when we're looking at a death experience, it's an ending experience. So we don't know what level the ending could be on. So the 5 is self-explanatory, I think, because the 5 is about loss and mourning, and we all understand that. The 8 is a real indicator of a physical death. It's one of the cards I find, if that's there with a lot of the others, and that's often there before the person actually dies. Why do you think that might be? Withdrawing from life, yeah. Shifting onto a higher plane, yep. Yeah. Preparing to leave. Turning their back on life as they know it, yeah. But does the 8 of Cups always mean that? No, it doesn't. What does it often mean?
Leaving a relationship is no longer emotionally fulfilling.
Yes. What else? Leaving a job that someone's passionate about. Don't put it on a circumstance. What does it actually just mean? Beginning an inner journey for higher knowledge, higher understanding about oneself. You could be going to have psychotherapy and get that card, because where he's going, he's heading towards he's got his staff, he seems to be going to see the hermit to me. So it's withdrawing, it's emotional withdrawal from what has previously been fulfilling in life. Okay, so ultimately it's emotional withdrawal from life. Where are we? Cups. What one? Oh yeah, now the 3 at the bottom might surprise you a little bit, but the Ace of Cups is an outpouring of love and emotion shared with others with the 3 of Cups. And the 10 of Cups is, I'm also a funeral celebrant, and the thing that I see a great deal of is how the effect a death can have on a family. And if it's a reasonably functioning family, then it draws the family together. And there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of tears, and there's a lot of love within that family at that time. Okay? So some people would be put off by those cards because we usually see them to be happy cards. But when we look at them a bit more deeply, the Ace of Cups is an outpouring of emotion. That's what the Ace of Cups is. The 3 of Cups is the sharing of emotion and feelings with others. It's nothing to say they have to be necessarily happy emotions and feelings, not technically when you look at the card. We still toast. What do? We have a wake and we toast the person and we talk about them. So we don't actually call it a party, but there is that kind of celebration of the life of the person who has lived. And the 10 of Cups, a funeral is a gathering of loved ones. That's what a funeral is. So you often see those cards when someone has died. And I think that people are not always expecting that. They don't always expect to see that. Now also from the suit of Pentacles, as death often involves the distribution of assets. From the suit of Pentacles you can see these cards often combined with the Death card, the Tower, or the 8 of Cups, or some of those other cards we've just looked at. And the 4 of Cups would have to do with perhaps the person who's left behind who has now become much more financially secure. This could be your client. The same with the 9 of Pentacles. They're now independently financially secure. Perhaps they have inherited. The same with the 10 and the same with the 6. So those cards usually mean that the person will be financially more comfortable from the death of the person who has died. The 10 of Pentacles tends to suggest that it's a member of their family. Okay, but otherwise it could, I guess, come from just from the person who's died. And sometimes that person in a reading like an astrological spread is not identifiable. So sometimes you have more of a reading that someone is dying, but the real reason for that information is that they're going to leave you money. Okay, and you look for that in the 2nd or the 8th house of an astrological reading. The astrological spread is a fantastic spread. If you don't do it, then have a go at it. It's really good. Okay. So what usually happens is you tend to see a grouping of cards, and when you see the grouping of cards together, they're actually quite confronting. So let's go back then to when clients may specifically ask you about the health of a person, like their parent. And then what you might do for that is, I presume everyone actually uses the Celtic Cross, do you? Everyone know how to do a Celtic Cross? The world's best loved tarot spread. Anyone who doesn't? Sort of. Okay, all right. It is the world's best loved tarot spread. And I have got some examples of readings that we're going to sort of do together using the Celtic Cross. But I'm just going to start off sort of building up to that. So what I often do is, if at the end of a reading a client might say to me, oh, just before I go, you know how you sometimes say, have you got any other questions, which is not always a good idea. The client might say, oh yes, you know, I want to ask about my mother and my father and my children. And if it's me, because I work to a clock, I'll look at the clock and think, oh yes, well I can fit that in. How many children do you have? 6. Okay. So anyway, these are actual examples that I'm giving you now. They're not, I haven't made them up just to fit the talk. They're real. Okay. So the first one that I'm looking for here . Sorry if the thing's going off. Just got to find it. Did have them in order before. Now I've lost them. I'm trying to talk so that it doesn't go off, Linda. Do you want to, is that the thing to do? To just keep chatting away? Is that what I do? All right, well, I'll do that until I find the thing. Got some under here. I think it was one I did yesterday, so it should be on the bottom. No, maybe I didn't actually get an overhead for this, but you can write it down. Okay, so the following cards were chosen by a client who asked about her father, who had been ill recently and was going for tests that particular day. Yeah, and thanks, Linda. And the cards that she chose were the Emperor, the Fool, and the Sun. Okay. So you think about, can you all recognise those in your head without me having to dig them out? Okay. So the Emperor, the Fool, and the Sun. Now, what would you say to that question? She wanted to know about her father, who had been ill recently and was going for tests that day. If you turn me off for a minute, Linda, I'll fix it. Okay. So, yeah, any ideas about that? The Emperor would represent who? It was her father? Yeah, okay. Who had been ill and was going for tests. So there was no idea as to whether the tests would turn out all clear or whether the tests would produce a problem. The Fool was the next card and the Sun was the last one. Pardon? The test would be favourable. Who else thinks the test would be favourable? Could be either. Have faith that it would turn out all right.
Which is always a good X-ray, you know, you could manage it.
Okay, so what's the essence of that though? What is the essence of what you can see there? Is he going to be sick? Okay, so if I was reading that, I would probably say to the client, well, okay, you know, your father's either going to have these tests done and he is either going to get an absolutely all clear on what is wrong with him, or he's probably going, or this could be the, he could die from that. Okay, I don't think I would have said that to the client, but that's what I would have thought. So I said it will be completely one way or the other. If he gets a good result, then he'll be absolutely clear, but if not, then he's got probably got a really serious illness, something like that. Okay, the result of that I know, because her father was diagnosed with inoperable stomach cancer and died within 2 months. Now it's there, it's absolutely there.
Sometimes when people get a really, what we would call bad diagnosis, I'm just thinking of my brother-in-law recently, when the decision was actually made and he could do nothing about it, his attitude improved and he was fine. Whereas, so it's like that release, which I think there's sort of a release in that, okay, this is it and I can't do anything about it, but it relieves the person of a lot of things.
Well, what I would bear in mind would be that I wasn't doing this reading for her father. I was doing it for her. And this was about her father. So obviously her father was ready to go, is what I would say. Is that what you're saying, Diane? Yeah. Her father would be ready to go. Okay. Now the next one is the Four of Swords, the Tower, and the Ten of Swords. Sorry, Linda. Yeah, be in there. The Four of Swords, the Tower, and the Ten of Swords. Ten of Swords and the Four of Swords, Linda. And the question was another client asking about her elderly mother, who had been in a nursing home for many years. Now this is a lady who'd been in a nursing home for many years, not sick, just bobbing along. And this is the most common question that I get asked, okay. You know, where the parents been in there. I had a personal friend whose mother was in a nursing home from when she was about 80 to when she was 93. Okay, now she wasn't really doing anything for all of that time. You know, she was in the nursing home, but she was just alive. Okay, she wasn't really alive. Do you understand the difference? Yeah. And that, what does that first card show you? And that's the one that you were talking about, Rudy. Yeah. What? She's in a nursing home. Yeah. So she's, sorry? Place of rest. Yeah. So she's leading a fairly subdued life would be how I would see that. And what do you think the other two, how would you answer that? Have a go.
Stroke or a heart attack.
Absolutely. Yeah. She died 4 months later from a stroke. Yeah. Yeah. 4 months, that's right, the timing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, 4 months from a stroke. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, now we can ask, there's a whole lot of ethical issues around this question. But when it's a question like these first two examples that I have given you, the first one is a bit iffy, isn't it? To say to someone, well, you know, your father's going for tests today, he's got those 3 cards, he's going to die. Okay, you really wouldn't say that ethically, would you? What about this one? Happy release. So do you think that it would be ethically reasonable to say that to your client? When the time comes, it'll be quick. Okay.
When it's an odd person and ask you, the lady knows it's probably going soon, so you...
No, see, I don't think she would know with that, Franca, because the tower suggests that it's sudden. So I don't think she would.
When there's a quick death, someone doesn't suffer so much. So you sort of couch it most. If you're going to talk about it, you have to couch it most.
I don't think I did. I think I just said to her, look, you'll be pleased to hear that your mother's going to die soon and very quickly, and it'll be over and she won't suffer, and that'll be the end of it. And the woman said, thank God. You know, because you think if it was you and you'd been lying around in a vegetative state for 10 years, wouldn't you be pleased to go? Okay, so, but that did help the daughter prepare that her mother was going to go soon. So she said, oh, well, I'll step up my visits, you know, and make a final run for it, you know. Yeah, well, if you've had a parent that dies like that, I think after a while you don't want to go anymore and it's all very difficult. So she said she would rev up her visits. Yeah. Yeah, the 4 of Swords, it depends how you do your timing, but I use swords as months. So to me it was 4 months. Yeah, but you know, you might use different timing systems, so you just use your own timing system. But to me and Linda as well, yeah, 4 months, yeah. I mainly use swords as my timing system. I don't bother with the days and weeks. I just use months. Years, sometimes I use years, but not if it looks like 5 years of heartache or something. I don't. All right, so now the difficult thing, of course, is seeing death in the for the client themselves, okay, and whether or not they have any awareness of that is the crucial question, okay. So as I said before, you can expect when you do thousands and thousands of tarot readings that sometimes you're going to be seeing people who are about to die, okay. And they may know they are dying and they may not. Now, the cards that you might expect to see are the Fool. We don't need to put these up. The Fool, which is the card that symbolises being on the verge of the unknown. And I'm going to show you a different picture of that isn't from the tarot at all, but from the Symbolon deck, because I like the image of it. It's not actually the card of the Fool, but I just think it's similar, and I think it illustrates that idea very well. Can you see the top card of the person who is jumping across the abyss. Okay, so it's not exactly the same, because in this version we've got the other side, whereas in the Fool we don't, do we? No. But I think that's a fairly good symbol of it. So that's why I would say the Fool. I'm just giving you a different idea of it. The Sun is another card that you see if someone is going to die. You see the card of the Sun. Why do you think you might see that? Any idea? Pardon? Yeah, and it's a card of rebirth, you know, and what we sometimes forget is that birth and death are really only two sides of the same doorway. We often do, we don't always remember that, do we? The World, which we saw the reason for that, is the successful completion of the life journey, is the World. The Hangman is the process of dying and letting go. And you see that card a lot when someone has a terminal illness. The Hangman is really the card of the terminal illness. And then you go into, you know, with the Hangman we can see the Elizabeth Kluber-Ross's 5 stages of dying: death, denial, anger, bargaining, depression and acceptance. And that all is part of that Hangman journey, whether it's about a physical death or a death of a relationship or the ending of a job. Those 5 stages of dying still apply. Judgment, release and liberation, and the Tower, a sudden death, which we looked at before, and also the Devil. Now, why do you think the Devil might be present in a reading where someone is about to die? Fear. Any other reason? The unconscious. Going to the darkness. Yeah, hadn't thought of that. Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay, the way I see it is when you look at the difference between the card of the Lovers and the card of the Devil. The card of the Lovers is about merging the life-creating forces together to create new life. The Devil is where, thanks Linda for putting those up, is where those two people from the card of the Lovers are not able to mate. Their energies are being chained or restricted in the card by some darker force. So I always see the Devil, a meaning that I use a lot, is denial of new life, because they can't create new life because they're chained to, and we know we usually read this as the shadow and the unconscious or an addiction or all the other things that they're chained to, but they can't get together to create new life. So in the unconscious there is no new life being created. This is also the card, this is going off the subject, but it's interesting that this is also the card that has to do with chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay, you know, when a person has no energy. But we can take that even further and say that it is a card that can indicate denial of life force energy. You know, and chronic fatigue is that on a mild level, death is that on a much larger level. Okay, now another thing that's interesting is the Wands cards. The Wands cards. And the Wands cards, the way I read the tarot, have to do with spirit. Okay, so this is your spirit self. And therefore it is, you would expect to see the spirit present. And if we look at them, the Two of Wands is the spirit or soul choosing to go. I really want you to look at that one for a minute. Sorry, I'm too scared to move in case I trip myself up. Whoops. The Two of Wands, I just want you to be able to see it more clearly. There we go. Now I'm in the way. That'd be better, wouldn't it? The Two of Wands actually, can you see the person in the picture in the Two of Wands? Where they actually are is that they're in a liminal space. So you can see that they're really in the same space as the Symbolon card of the Fool. Can you still picture that in your mind? Where the person has left one bank, one cliff, and is flying across the abyss to the other side. this person is actually in a similar place, in a liminal space between the past and the future. Now, I suppose like me, you often read that as choice, do you? Yeah, choice or options between the past and what they're attached to and the future and what they could be headed to. Is that how you mainly read it? Any other way that people read it? A sense of frustration? Yeah, he's definitely looking out towards broader scope and towards broader worlds. So the liminal space can be the space between the past, which is life, and the future, which is death. Well, no, not the future that is death. The future that is new life. Okay? The future which is new life. So it's the life that was and the new life. And when you get this card, the person is in between, in the liminal space. So it's a bit like the Ace of Cups in that they've already started to move away. Okay, the Three of Wands, Spirit looks out towards what lays ahead. So the soul, the suit of wands to me is the suit that's most connected to spirit / soul. So therefore the person's soul is starting to look towards the future. I always see wands as the first level of awareness. So it's the intuitive functioning. So that's where the person would get the first intuition or gut feeling that something was shifting, changing or moving within themselves. The Six, that's a victory card. And for our spirit, death is a victory. It's, wow, I've done it. I can now go home. Okay, because spirit belongs where? Not here. When we think of spirit, where do we think of it? We're thinking of it being opposite to earth? Yeah. So this is, earth is not spirit's home. Am I offending anyone if I say that? No. Okay. So therefore in the... Okay. Yes, but it's here for the moment. While we've got the body, yeah. But in the Wands cards, when you're reading it as perhaps something to do with death, it's when spirit is looking to move beyond the body. Yeah. And in the tarot, when we look at the card of the Fool, the tarot is partly based on reincarnation. I don't think you can look at a tarot deck and not get a sense of reincarnation from the Fool and the Wheel of Fortune and a lot of the other cards. So reincarnation implies that for a period of time, spirit is not in a body. Okay, so this is where spirit is preparing to move out of the body, okay, in order to have a period of time in spirit. Is that okay? Right, okay. So therefore it's a victory because being in a body is where we learn our lessons. And this is victorious because I've now learned my lessons. I can now move onto a different stage of the Wheel of Fortune, you know, like a new cycle of evolving. The, where was I? Yes, so that's the 6, spirit being victorious. The 8, that's spirit really almost moving on. Yeah, flying. Yeah. The 10 is where, and this is the card that older people often get. When the spirit is just worn out with life. You know, I just can't keep on doing this anymore. This is too hard. Also, when people have put up a really good fight, like when they've been diagnosed with a terminal illness and they've done all the right things and they've, you know, meditated and they've eaten all the right foods and this is saying they've just got to a point now where they just can't go on anymore. They just can't. The spirit is saying, let go, time to move on. And the Knight is spirit on its way, similar to the 8. Okay? So, you know, when you want to look at it that way, you really can look at it that way, can't you? It depends whether you choose to or not. Okay. Now, from the Suit of Cups, the 5 is often when someone knows they're dying, and it's the emotional body looking back on those persons whom the dying person has loved. Okay, so it's where you know you're going and you're looking at the people that you have loved. The 8, again, as we know, is crossing the chasm towards the journey to the next life, and where the soul is leaving behind the people in this world whom they have loved and been emotionally attached to. Okay, and that's when they may even begin to say goodbye. I know when my father died, I couldn't understand why. I didn't think my father was going to die. I thought my father was going to live forever. And I remember going into the hospital to see him, and he was admitted for some tests. And I didn't think he was, going to die. So we went in to see him, and he started thanking me. And he started saying, oh, you've been a wonderful daughter. Thank you for everything, and, kissing me goodbye. And as I was driving home, I thought, this is about 10 years ago, I thought, that's strange. Why was he telling me all that? He died within 2 days. Okay? So he knew. He didn't know he knew, but he knew. Okay? And he died of pneumonia. He developed pneumonia 24 hours after that conversation. Now, just in a normal Celtic Cross tarot reading, or any spread you might do, a lack of pentacles is always worrying. And that's because, as our friend over here says, whose name I know I should know and I've forgotten, Elsie, thanks Elsie. As Elsie said, spirit is in a physical body, and it's the suit of pentacles that is the physical body. So when you're doing a reading about a question where someone might ask you about a death, a lack of pentacles for the person is saying that they are, not very attached to the earth, would be a way of putting it. Okay. Now, I'm just going to show you, a lot of people here who've learned tarot from me will know this spread. Those of you who haven't learned tarot from me won't know this spread probably. So I'll just sort of go through it with you. It's called a life cycle spread, and it's a spread that I do for every client who comes to see me, as the first spread that I do for them. And why I'm talking about it is just to illustrate how often we don't have to say anything. Okay, so the first card is the Wheel of Fortune, and so the Wheel of Fortune is the card of fate. It is the one card there's two, I think, the Tower and the Wheel of Fortune. But this is the card of fate. So what this first card might mean if I was... I don't know where to put myself. If I was reading... Can you see? If I was reading it for a client, I'll just read it to you how I would read it. And I'm not saying that it's the only way to read it. I'm not saying it's the right way to read it. It's just how I would read it. Okay. So in this particular spread, the first card is what is, of central importance to the person. What's the focus of their life at the moment. And the Wheel of Fortune to me would be about that they're evolving into a new phase of their life, their fate, their destiny. And that they're at a major turning point in their life where fate is present. So it's the beginning of a new cycle. Okay, so the wheel is turning, and at this point, who knows what the wheel might bring. In the unconscious, with the Death card, that position of the Death card is the unconscious or the subconscious. We've got the bikies out the front. What does that mean? How do we bring that into the session? It might be the Black Deaths or something. The Black Deaths bikie group. So in the unconscious, the Death card would tell me that I'm not reading about anyone dying here. The Death card would tell me that the person has a subconscious precognitive awareness that their life is about to change profoundly, that it's time to let go of attachments, perhaps the way they look at themselves. They might want to make some inner changes, the way they think, the way they feel about things. Or they may even be expecting that there is going to be a change in the external world whereby they might be going to detach from something. So So they're going into a phase of all those words we had there, transformation, letting go, all the rest of it. Okay. Now I would say to my client, where you're heading with the card of the World, you're heading towards the phase of a major completion in your life. To me, I always give a 20-year timing to the World card. So I would say you're coming to the end of a 20-year cycle where you have satisfactorily completed a whole phase and stage of development both inside yourself and in the world around you. So it's a time of success, of feeling as if you've done whatever you needed to do well and it's now time to move on. Or you may just feel with the Death card in the unconscious that it's time to give up on a phase of endeavour and move on. Just decide that that's its completion phase and time to move on. The Star. Star in the position of the self or the personality. That you've undergone some perhaps profound healing within yourself, that you are opening up to seeing yourself and knowing yourself on a profound level, that you're becoming quite positive about the future, that it's time to be positive about the future, and that you're heading towards a much calmer and happier. You sense you're heading towards a much calmer and perhaps happier period of your life. Something to that effect. Judgment in the external world, that's the position in this spread, that's the external world or the environment. With judgment there, you seem to be going to release yourself from attachments in the external world. There's something in your life that you've come to a crossroad with, and there's a sense that you want to be liberated from whatever that is, and so on and so forth. Okay. And when I did this particular reading for this woman, I was having a sort of an unusual feeling. I was thinking, oh, this sounds a bit sus. You know, this doesn't sound, it doesn't sound as good as it looks, was what I was really thinking. And at the end of it, the client said to me, I'm not going to die, am I? Now, did I mention death the way I read that reading to any of you? Didn't mention it at all, did I? That was what she said to me. Okay, I'm not going to die, am I? I said, why do you think that you might be going to die? Well, both my auntie and my sister have had breast cancer. So, you know, what do you do with this reading? You know, what would you do with it?